Okay, so I'm just going to so I'll do a presentation to start with. Hopefully you can see my screen here. And then once the presentation has finished, then there'll be lots of time to answer, for you to ask questions and for us to answer them. So a very warm welcome to this webinar and to the Virtual Ear Institute. My name is Hannah Cooper and I'm a lecturer at the Ear Institute. It says here that Paul Radomski is presenting this. Paul is the Programme Director for Audiological Science with Clinical Practice, and he is with us today. Unfortunately, though, he's lost his voice, so he's going to communicate via the chat for any questions, but I can also help with questions about the programmes as well. We're also joined by our student ambassador, Irene Wong. She is a current student on MSc Audiological Science with Clinical Practice, and she's going to be sharing her experience with you all today. So in this session, I'm going to start by giving you a brief overview of two of our courses, MSc Audiological Science and MSc Audiological Science with Clinical Practice. And as I said, there'll then be plenty of time for you to ask any questions. So I expect that most of you know at least a little bit about what audiology is, but just to recap, it's a branch of science where we study hearing and balance related disorders. It's about identifying and assessing hearing and balance function in people and their associated disorders. It's a rapidly developing field. The need for audiological services is really clear. 16% of the UK population have a significant hearing loss. The World Health Organization estimates that by 2050, over 700 million people, or 1 in 10, of the population of the world will have a disabling hearing loss. So this is something that is crucial for not just the UK, but internationally. So this profession and this branch of science is really something that we need to be paying attention to, and something that you'll definitely will be in need of as we move forward. And then an audiologist is a healthcare professional who can work in a variety of settings, so hospitals, primary care, private practice, and audiologists carry out a wide range of clinical duties, including assessment and rehabilitation of people with hearing loss or with balance disorders, or potentially with things like tinnitus and hyperacusis as well. So we have various test strategies that we use, and we want to determine whether people have normal access to and sensitivity to sounds. And then if they don't, we want to provide appropriate therapeutic rehabilitation and management. And you can see there's a web page here, which you might already have looked at, which gives you more information about the role of an audiologist. So if you haven't looked at that, do have a look at that NHS website there. So about our courses then, so I'm going to start by talking about MSc Audiological Science. So this MSc provides a detailed study of the hearing and balance mechanisms, the structure, function, pathology, and students learn how people develop hearing problems or are born with hearing problems, and also with balance difficulties as well. So you would learn how to test for hearing and balance problems and how to rehabilitate people who have the hearing or balance challenges. So you'd learn about the theory and the science underpinning the practical clinical skills. So that includes things like acoustics, anatomy and physiology, research methods. So alongside clinical skills, you also learn some basic science skills as well. So entry requirements are a minimum of a 2-2, a second-class bachelor's degree in a relevant discipline. So normally we say that is a science discipline from either a UK university or an overseas university that is of an equivalent standard. It's really important to note for MSc Audiological Science that this does not meet the requirements for any of the UK regulatory bodies in its own right, okay? And I'm going to talk a little bit about registration and regulation in a moment, but bear in mind that the 1-year MSc Audiological Science programme doesn't meet the standards for registration. You need to do the 2-year programme, which I'll come on to talking about in a moment. So here is the 2-year program. So this is MSc Audiological Science with Clinical Practice, and it is designed to train students who have a degree in a science discipline as audiologists. So it's a 2-year program. It includes a clinical placement, which normally is in the 2nd year. It takes place over about 11 months. You need to do 900 hours minimum in clinical practice, and this provides the core knowledge and skills and clinical competency necessary for employment as an audiologist and also as a hearing aid dispenser. And again, I'll talk a little bit about the distinction between the two in a moment. Year 1 of this 2-year program is the same as the MSc in Audiological Science. Entry requirements are slightly higher for ASCP, as we call it. So you need a 2-1 in a relevant discipline from a UK university or an overseas equivalent qualification. We do recognise, though, that not everybody meets this requirement. So if you have, for example, 5 years of relevant clinical experience, maybe as an associate audiologist or an ATO, then this can also be considered as well. So do get in touch with Paul if you have a non-standard qualification or a non-standard background, because this may be something that would make you eligible for this degree. So just a little bit about registration. This is where audiology careers can get a bit confusing. We have several registration bodies in the UK for audiologists, and then there are countless others throughout the world. So here's what MSc Audiological Science with Clinical Practice allows you to do. You can register as a hearing aid dispenser with the Health and Care Professions Council, that's the HCPC. And this allows you to assess hearing and provide hearing aids and aftercare in the private sector. So with the 2-year program, you will be eligible for registration with HCPC as a hearing aid dispenser. It also allows you to register with the Registration Council for Clinical Physiologists and apply to work in the NHS as a healthcare scientist in audiology, and this usually starts at a salary band 5 level. So if you do want to have a look at what's available at the moment at that kind of entry level grade, then log on to the NHS jobs website and look for band 5 audiologists, and you can see what's available and what's out there. Bit more information about audiology careers, then do have a look at the British Academy of Audiology website. The BAA is our professional body, so lots of information there by audiologists, for audiologists, not just for people who are practicing now, but for people who are thinking about becoming audiologists. And also the NHS careers website has some really great information as well. So that's the end of the presentation. So we'll open the floor to any questions. You can type in the Q&A forum if you'd like to, and we'll answer it that way. You're also really welcome to put your cameras on and your microphones on as well. While you type or have a think about what you want to ask, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to pass over to Irene. And Irene, I think you're going to tell us a bit about your experience of studying here at the Institute.
Thank you, Hannah, for giving out all the information for our attendees. So hello, everyone. I'm so happy to see you all joining us today. I'm Irene, and I'm an international student currently in my 1st year of the MSc Audiological Science with Clinical Practice program. So I would like to share with you briefly about my own experience studying audiology here and how I think the program has helped me prepare to become a qualified audiologist. So as some of you might have been wondering how intense is the study here for this program. So I would say there is indeed a variety of learning activities we need to do in campus. Apart from lectures, tutorials running from Monday to Friday, we also have practicals in the skills lab with all the equipment that we need. So, but after 2 years in COVID pandemic, I think I particularly treasure the opportunity of having a real campus life and face-to-face learning. So despite the long list of learning tasks that I need to complete every week, there is still some autonomy in how I want to shape my own study progress, because the teaching staff here, they design quite some materials for self-paced studies. So I get to decide how much I want to learn each week flexibly, and our teachers are all experienced clinicians who are really willing to help answer all the questions beyond the lectures. And additionally, something that is really special in my opinion, about studying here is that we were studying certain fundamental sciences courses with students from other programs as well, who are ENT doctors, practicing audiologists. They gave so much additional knowledge and personal experience in the tutorial discussions, and they are all willing to help us, the students in training. So we are getting some extra insights about audiology work and healthcare in general. So the study might be stressful for some of you, or but it was definitely a good training for me to cope with different situations and have solid basic knowledge and skills in audiology before going into my clinical observations from January this year and the full year placement in the next year. So I have been rotating at different NHS hospitals and centers in this term, and they are absolutely wonderful. So I'm meeting a lot of practicing audiologists, some specialists, STP students, ENT consultants in those settings. I got the opportunity to see a large range of audiology clinical work and taking care of different populations as well. So it's not just the facts and theories that learn in class are important, but the operations of the department, the flow of the appointment, how you hone your patient communication skills and decision making. And these are all valuable classes that you're going to have. So it's just amazing that I can have such exposure at an early stage of my training, and it's given me more realistic perception about being an audiologist in a real healthcare setting. So I also gradually become more attuned to a clinician mindset instead of just being a master's student. And there are some other qualities I wish I can nurture during the program and transform into a capable clinician that I aspire to be. Talking a little bit about research project that you probably noticed on the webpage of our program. So our program puts quite a relatively heavy emphasis on students having the skills and competence in handling research projects. I personally believe it's a part of the skill building process for even a clinician. If you need to know how to appraise the evidence, you need to know how it's done. So it contributes to your future decision-making in clinical work as well. We have all sorts of research projects led by excellent researchers at the Institute. It's not just audiology in this term, but it extends to acoustics, neuroscience, cell biology, cognitive science, and more. So if you're interested in any of the topics, you're probably going to find a suitable project to work on during your study here. So hopefully the information and our Q&A session can help you decide whether this is a program you want to do and help you achieve what you want to. So thank you, everyone. So drop us some questions if you want.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Irene. That's great. Hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavour of what it's like to be a student. Do ask Irene any questions in the chat. She's super happy to answer anything. It doesn't have to be about the course. It can be about life in London. Irene is an international student, so if you want to know about her experience of being an international student, then do ask any questions that you want to. I think Paul's typing some answers at the moment. I'm gonna answer a question here that says, how are you assessed in clinical practice during the MSc Audiological Science? So Audiological Science is the one-year program, and so there are clinical observation sessions, but they are not directly assessed in the way that they are in the two-year program, where you have lots of clinical competencies. There are skill sessions in diagnostic audiology and in rehabilitation audiology, so they have practical elements which are assessed in a laboratory setting, so in a controlled setting, in a skills lab. So in the MSc Audiological Science, there's more emphasis on the science element, and then the clinical practice element is reduced in that one. So remember that there's sort of these two degrees, one of which, the two-year degree, means that you would be a qualified audiologist, and the other one means that you would have a good grounding in audiological science, but you wouldn't be able to practice in the UK as an audiologist with the one-year program. Kavya, you completed your master's in India. You'd like to continue your professional development in the UK. Will this higher training scheme, is it helpful to join or only to distance? Is the one-year program after the master's as an audiology? So Kavya, I don't know if you're an audiologist already. If you are, if you've done a master's in audiology already and you are a practicing audiologist, then we actually have a really great webinar for you tomorrow evening on advanced audiology, MSc advanced audiology. So let me know if I've misinterpreted that, but if you're interested in doing further study in audiology rather than starting out as an audiologist, then MSc advanced audiology is probably a better place for you. And yeah, as I mentioned, we've got a webinar tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock for advanced audiology. Let me have a look. And there's another one. Great. Paul's typing a message to Tianwei. Okay, so I think that maybe this might be one for you, Irene. So someone's asked, what is the timetable like? Okay. Do you want to say what the timetable is like from your point of view?
Yeah, let me see. So I guess because we are still under blended learning mode this year because of COVID, so things might be a little bit different for students enrolling in the next year. But generally, so we have both our courses that are fundamental sciences, so at least 2 or 3 of them you have to do, like research, statistics, anatomy, physiology, acoustics. We also have our clinical modules that will start right away from term 1. So we would basically have like lectures, tutorials, practicals on at least 4 weekdays. Sometimes it might be 5 weekdays. So at least maybe 2 days are going to be like from 9 to 12, like 2 hours in the morning and then 2 hours in the afternoon, something like that. But beyond that, you're going to have some self-paced studies that you have to do or choose what you want to do, I would say. So it's basically what we did last term, but in this term, more time will be allocated for your clinical observations. There will still be 2 clinical modules that you have to do. So I would say for each term, at least you're expecting at least 3 to 4 days of in-person tutorial or placement.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think for some MSCs, maybe in different subjects, it might not be full-time, but this is a full-time course. Yeah, Irene, I would say. So as Irene said, you have quite a lot of contact time, but in between that contact time, then there's lots of self-paced learning to do. And in terms of blended learning, I think we were moving towards that pre-pandemic, but actually the pandemic has accelerated that for us. There's lots of great things about blended learning, actually. As Irene says, you can choose when you do some of that learning and how you do it. So we're definitely going to be sticking with the blended learning model from now on. So there'll be definitely in-person, face-to-face sessions. Absolutely, that's fundamental to the program. This is a practical course. You need to get your hands on the equipment and your hands on the people, but also there's opportunities for you to be a bit more flexible in how you do some of the learning because some of it is self-paced. And Sophia's asked, are the lectures recorded? Yes, everything is now recorded. So there are recorded lectures often to watch before a tutorial session. So there'll be sort of 10-minute, 15-minute blocks of lectures to watch. You watch those in preparation, you come to the tutorial, you do some tasks at the tutorial. The tutorial is also recorded as well. So yeah, I think that's also something that's really, I think is really helpful, and I hope that you do as well, Irene, is that actually, if you want to look back on something now, it's really super easy to do that. If you think, oh, I didn't quite get what they said there, I'm just going to rewind the lecture and have another go. Whereas, you know, if we're just in person and there's no recording, then you've missed your opportunity if you don't get it the first time round. So yeah, absolutely, everything is recorded. Do ask us anything else. While you're thinking of that, so I've been an audiologist for 16 years, and it's a really, really great career. And so congratulations on your choice. Because it is something that gives you lots of different opportunities. So I still work as an audiologist 1 day a week, and I'm a pediatric audiologist, and then I do some research and I do some teaching. So there's lots of different things that you can do in the clinic. So you might work with adults, you might work with children, you might work in balance disorders, you might work with people with learning disabilities, people with tinnitus and hyperacusis, lots and lots of different scope just within the clinic. And then outside of the clinic, you can work for instrument manufacturers. So you could be a rep and you could be an educator within a company and tour around the country or the world. You can work in research, you can work in education. There's loads and loads of opportunities. A couple of years ago, saw some jobs in the Caribbean. You'd be an audiologist in the Caribbean. So there's lots of things, loads of places that you can go to practice your skills. And from the statistics, I mean, this is something that is not going to go away, right? People are getting older. That means that people are getting hearing loss more frequently. That means that an audiologist skills are very, very much in demand. And that brings us on to, is there high demand for audiologists in the NHS at the moment? Absolutely. There's quite a shortage at the moment of audiologists in the NHS, especially at that entry level as well. So certainly you can expect to be snapped up once you're qualified. And I think our stats are still 100% of our graduates are in employment 6 months after they graduate. So yeah, really, really high demand for audiologists. So a question, I think Paul's answering something about not being able to attend a session because of COVID, so I'll let Paul answer that one. So in terms of academic requirements for carrying on to the second year to do the clinical practice year, yes, you need to pass in most of the modules. So you can look on the UCL website about requirements for progression. So yeah, you need to pass the vast majority of the modules, and if there is an option to fail a couple, but you can only fail it by a very small margin. You always get 2 attempts to take any assessment if you fail at the first attempt. So if you fail at the first attempt, there will always be a second attempt for you to try again. So I wouldn't recommend retaking year 1. There's lots of implications for that. Financial would be a big one. So yeah, making sure that you work hard and keep up in year 1 is really important. But if you fail 1 assessment, that is certainly not the end of the world. And there's opportunities for that to be retaken. A really great question. What are the differences between a hearing aid dispenser and an audiologist? So yes, I think that the language surrounding audiology careers is not necessarily that helpful, and I don't know how you found it, Irene, sort of starting off in terms of knowing about the differences between these bits.
So starting off with these 2 terms, I noticed that hearing aid dispenser, it depends on the country as well.
Yeah.
In some countries, it does imply some of the difference in terms of the profession and regulation of what you can do and what you can't do. Yeah. But here in the UK, I think it's more like a private versus public difference. But in other places, and I think when we are mentioning hearing aid dispenser in the slides here with the HCPC, is more like the term to refer to private practitioner, instead of the difference of you can't doing diagnostics, that kind of difference.
So a hearing aid dispenser is an audiologist. So if we think about audiologist as this umbrella term for anybody that is clinically involved in hearing and balance disorders. A hearing aid dispenser is somebody with an additional qualification that means that they can practice privately. And so there are some legal and ethical things that you need to know about in the UK system. That means that you need this extra registration to practice privately. So our MSc, Audiological Science with Clinical Practice, gives you those extra things and allows you to register as a hearing aid dispenser. So you do need that HCPC registration as a hearing aid dispenser to work in the private sector in the UK. And then you are highly recommended to have RCCP registration to work in the NHS. Of course, lots of people have both and work in both the private sector and the NHS. So you can register with both organisations and you can work both in the private sector and in the public sector as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna add a bit is that, but if you're not from the UK or you don't intend to practice in the UK, it will be better to look up the regulatory body's website in your country to see the difference. They could imply some differences.
Yeah, thanks for that, Irene. Yeah, absolutely, there are, as I mentioned earlier, there are lots of regulatory bodies around the world for audiology. If your intention, if you're an international student, or if you're a UK student and your intention is to go and work abroad, you probably want to start thinking about that quite early on and looking into the regulatory requirements of the country that you want to work in, because they may be different. But we're absolutely happy to help you with those kinds of things. But you'll need to come with the information to us. We don't know about every single regulatory body throughout the world. But as I said, we're super happy to help if you have some questions about that. Hamish has asked about the clinical placement. Mature student travelling up daily from the Kent coast wondered where students tend to do their placements. Irene, do you want to tell us about the variety of places that you've been to do your, I'm guessing the sort of the observation sessions?
If it is the observation sessions, they will mainly be in London. Yeah, I would say pretty much in London. But if you're interested in doing like the second year, they could go into Greater London area or even outside of London. There would be some choices offered. Yeah.
You're right. So if we're talking about the observation sessions, then generally they're within central London. At the second year, we have people in a variety of places. So Irene's right. Some are in central London, some are in Greater London, some are outside London. So yeah. I don't know if Paul might be writing a little bit more about that. How many people on average are on the course? So we normally have sort of in the first year, we normally have about 20 people, 20, 25 people, something like that. So it's reasonably small groups. And it is nice because we do get to know each other, and particularly now that we're back in person, I think hopefully there's we chat to each other in the corridor even sometimes, and we do get to know each other quite well in terms of the staff and the students. So yeah, 20, 25, something like that. Fewer in the second year because not everybody does the 2-year program. How does term 3 and the summer term differ in terms of research project assessment contact time? Yeah, great question. So there are exams in the third term. So teaching, the main teaching period finishes at the end of the second term, and then the third term is exams. But also it's about the research project as well. So there'll be some times where you want to concentrate on revision and study for exams, but also keeping your research project going as well. And then this is a full calendar year. If you do the 1-year course, this is a full calendar year MSc. And if you do the 2-year course, the first year is a full calendar year. So the research project, Irene started her research project sort of January time, really, didn't you? But was thinking about it even from the first few weeks. Actually.
Right at the beginning.
Right.
We got the list. And we have to start talking to supervisors. So
yeah, do you want to explain a bit about that process, Irene?
Oh yeah, so I think it is around September and October you will be already receiving some information or the handbook about the research module, and then you get a list of different projects led by different researchers in the department. But of course you can also propose your own project if you want to. And then we need to talk to the different supervisors to learn about the projects. And then you're gonna rank them in your preference. Then they would do the assignment process. And then you get the results about the assignment at around maybe in November or December. And then probably by then you start talking to your supervisor, getting some materials ready, do some literature review, and you're going to present on your proposal and start working. something like that.
Yeah, so it starts really right at the beginning of the course, and then there's sort of mini deadlines throughout the year just to help you keep the pace going on your research project. But the main hand-in date is at the beginning of September, and then we have a poster session as well just after that. So yeah, it does last for all through the summer. So data collection, analysis, and write-up go on through the summer. Someone's asked if audiology, MSc audiology would be helpful for doctors who want to specialise in ENT. So again, actually, one of our advanced audiology courses might be more appropriate. So we have MSc Advanced Audiology, Otology and Skull-Based Surgery is the not very snappy title. So you're more than welcome to come to our session tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. So we have an Advanced Audiology webinar tomorrow evening at 6, where we can absolutely talk about that. So that might be better if you have a medical qualification. An international student, you'd like to work in the UK after graduation, would there be extra procedures required to register with RCCP or HCPC? Paul, can you answer that one? So I don't think that there's lots of extra procedures actually, because this qualification allows you to work to register with those bodies. But let me just check with Paul so that he can let you know about that. So Paul's just answering that question now. If your placement is outside London, does that mean that you would have to move there? It depends on a lot of things, I think. So my clinical job is at the Royal Berkshire Hospital in Reading, and we do have UCL students there, and those students have chosen to move to Reading. It's expensive to travel on the train, and it takes quite a long time. So it sort of depends on your own personal circumstances, I would say. But it's quite a lot of work, the clinical placement. So you probably want to be reasonably near. But people have done a year where they've commuted to a different town and done really well. So yeah, I think it would depend on your personal circumstances. How many words is the dissertation? The dissertation is 10,000 words maximum. So it's a substantial piece of work, but it's not an overwhelming size of work. I hope that's right, Irene.
I think that's the regular word limit for basically all types of master's dissertation. It's about 10,000.
Yeah, so it's 10,000 words, and then it's a 60 credit module. So this is a third of the first year. It's worth a third of the first year, or the whole of the a third of the whole of the MSc Audiological Science. So we would normally say that that's about 600 hours of work. So maybe think about it like that. So that's about 4 months, 16 weeks of a full-time job. So yeah, it's not a small undertaking, but it's certainly doable in the time. Is the postgraduate diploma audiological science with clinical practice 24 months or less due to there being no project? So I think what you would do there, or Paul's just answering as well, Sophia, but I think what you would do there is you just, in the first year, you just wouldn't do the project. So everything would finish in the third term. You would go and have a nice summer, and then you would start again in September. But Paul will clarify that. Janvi has asked, would it be suitable for a biomedical engineering student? Yes, absolutely. I would say that's a great background to have, and would pursuing this degree lead to a career within the research and development sector within audiology? Again, yes, it absolutely could. And yeah, certainly if you were looking at research and development, it might be a good idea to do MSc Audiological Science and then maybe think about a PhD afterwards. And I think as an engineering student, there have been lots of openings, and certainly we have lots of different research happening at the Ear Institute. As Irene says, there's everything from sort of mosquitoes and Drosophila flies to single-celled cell biology, to neuroscience, and to translational clinical research, to clinical research. So there's lots and lots of options there. in terms of research. And as Irene was saying about the research projects, we have a big booklet of options that you can choose from. So in the first few weeks, right, Irene, you get this massive.
There are like 50 to 60 different projects out there for us to choose at that time. So it's quite a large range of topics. Yeah,
and it really does span the range of hearing sciences really, and vestibular sciences as well. So there are clinical projects, but there's lots of sort of science and engineering projects as well. So yeah, I think biomedical engineering would be really good. Sophia, excellent. So Sophia lives in Reading. So there is a ranking system for placements, and so you would just need to go through the ranking system with everybody else. So if you ranked it highly and then nobody else wanted to live in Reading, then I'm sure it would be possible to go to Reading. But yeah, there's a ranking system to make sure that it's fair. How many weeks of holiday are there? How many weeks of holiday are there, Irene?
So during the Christmas, I think we have 3 weeks between term 1 and term 2.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure about like this September and October, like before year 2. That one I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think it's 3 weeks at Christmas, 3 weeks at Easter. I mean, you know, I think that it's important to have a break in the summer. There are a lot of things going on in the summer though, but I think it is very important to build a break into that. You need to look after your own well-being. And then, yeah, normally you start placement in the first week of October. So you would hand in your project in early September. There's poster session mid-September, and then start in October for the placement. So there is a bit of holiday, but it's important to think about breaks as well as study. We don't really observe reading week. There's a lot of content to fit in. So some modules will have a reading week, but most don't have reading weeks on this programme. Paul's just answering the question about clinical placements. So Colette is an SLP, speech and language pathologist, Colette, with an interest in therapy for children with hearing impairment, with the clinical placements in the 2-year programme be predominantly serving the adult population. Yeah, so the main focus is the adult population, yes, but there will be observations and some work. It's called assist level work. We're in balance and pediatrics as well. So but the majority of it is focused towards adult diagnostics and rehabilitation. But that doesn't mean that you can't then go on to develop your skills in pediatrics or in balance or in tinnitus. So yeah, there's you might want to have a look at a training scheme that is provided by the British Academy of Audiology called the Higher Training Scheme. So that is an in-service training scheme that lets you extend your skills basically. So there's M-level work that you need to do with that, and practical work, and that's often provided by your workplace. This is a great question. What do you wear during clinical sessions? Is there a uniform or dress code? Do you want to tell us what do you think is appropriate, Irene?
So in terms of clinical observations, so we don't have a uniform for observations, but you need to be like in smart casuals. So you have to kind of wear what patient would expect professionals would wear, also kind of like no trainers, that kind of rules that we've been told to. But during the 2nd year placement, I think for at least some hospitals, they're going to be uniform for students.
Yeah, I think you're right. So interestingly, since the pandemic, I've worn scrubs and trainers for the entire time, whereas before I was very much dressed, you know, professionally and smartly dressed, whereas now I just feel like I go to work in my clinical work in my pajamas, but it's very comfortable. So yeah, we still have that in place in my clinical job, where we all wear we all wear scrubs, but and some places do have a uniform, but I think most audiologists wear smart dress. So yeah, you want to give off a professional air when a patient walks into the room. So yeah.
I think some of the hospitals already uniform for the students so that they can identify that you're a student.
Okay. Yeah, potentially. Any more questions? Oh, I can see one from Colette in the chat, actually. I don't know if we've answered this one, Colette. You'd like to ask more about the clinical placements in the 2-year programme. How much travelling around to sites should we expect to do in the 2nd year? So limited travelling around to different sites in the 2nd year. So you'll have a base where you do the majority of your training. If, for example, they don't, at your base, there isn't, for example, a paediatric clinic, then you would need to go somewhere else, and we'll arrange for you to do some work at a different site. But you should be based at one hospital or at one placement centre. Within that, there may be outstations. So, for example, in Reading, we have the Royal Berkshire Hospital, which is our central site, but then we also have outstation sites, which are sort of maybe, I don't know, 10 to 12 miles away from the central site. So one in Oxfordshire and then some around West Berkshire, basically. So you might then be required to go to some of the outstations to access some of the training. So, for example, we don't have a balance function clinic in the main hospital. You have to go to a hospital in Oxfordshire, which is still part of the same team and the same hospital foundation trust. But yeah, to access some of that training, you need to go to a different site. But there shouldn't be lots of travelling around the country or anything like that. Is there anywhere we can find the list of placement places? So we don't release a list of placement places each year because each year it varies. But they are mostly within London and the south or southeast of England. But yeah, we don't guarantee each placement site year on year, so we don't release a full list each year. Anything else? I think we're coming towards the end of our session. Do have a look at our website. There's lots of information on the website about entry requirements and deadlines for applications. Our application deadline at the moment is the end of March, so it's quite soon actually. So there's about 6 weeks to get your applications in. So yeah, do have a look at our website for that. Is there a deadline for when we'll find out if we've been accepted? So I think it's normally sort of it depends on some of the processes. So if all of your paperwork is in order, for example, if your references have typed their references really quickly and things like that, then it turns around a bit quicker, but it's normally about 1 to 2 months, something like that. So from our point of view, we try to turn it around as quickly as possible once all the paperwork is in place. But everything gets uploaded to the central site, so it should be a relatively straightforward process in terms of applying. Anything else that anybody wants to ask before we finish? I hope that's been useful for everyone. I hope that you're all going to apply and join us hopefully in September. We'd really welcome you to the Ear Institute. As I said, it's a great career. It's a lovely, friendly place at the Ear Institute, I think, and lots and lots of different opportunities. Can we find any internships related to audiology during the course? So in terms of internships, last year we did have a couple of internships, but they were much more related to teaching and learning than they were within audiology, but related to teaching and learning rather than to do with clinical practice as a standalone. But I mean, there's lots of a big part of the 2-year course is going on clinical placement, which I think potentially is equivalent to an internship. So yeah, so you would get that if you do the 2-year program, you would get that placement organised, and that will lead to your clinical qualification in audiology. But I don't really know that there are specific internships that are available in audiology that are particularly related to the Ear Institute. Paul's typing something else, or something agreeing with me maybe. Rosie has mentioned that there's just 10 minutes left of the session, so please do ask any more questions. Irene, do you want to say anything about London in general and your experience of London?
So I come in a pretty good time where the restrictions have been lifted. So I have been traveling to, so I think it's a bit different for everyone. Some people like to go to like bars or clubs, or something more to do with maybe wine or clubbing or music. I would say that I'm more into like museums or drama and some classical music. So I've been going to like, South Bank, Russell Square and Vauxhall. So these are the places that you're going to see a lot of theaters or orchestra. And if I want to go to movies, I usually go to Russell Square as well. And it really depends. I think some people like to travel outside of London as well, Cambridge, Oxford, or even York, Edinburgh. That is a popular one amongst international students. So I guess I plan to go to some those amazing parks in London in the coming spring. So when the flowers are coming back. So, for example, the Richmond Park, I heard that there are some deers in that park.
That's true.
So
yeah.
if you like a little bit of hiking, that would be a suitable place as well. And if you love restaurants and food, there'll just be an endless list for you to explore. There are quite some foodie accounts on Instagram you can see, and the UCL Student Union, they have been releasing student experience on those different areas. And you can also join the clubs from UCL. There are like a few hundred of them.
Yeah,
so, I'm not gonna list them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think London is often thought of as a very expensive city, and in some ways it really is, but actually there are lots of free or really low cost things that you can do in London to do with arts and culture, and even like restaurants. Like there are some super high-end restaurants in London, but then there are some really delicious but cheap restaurants across London.
There are also some street food market, and especially in Christmas, they are near London Bridge or some of the neighborhoods that you're living, probably.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's an amazing city. I did my undergraduate degree not in audiology actually, but I did it at UCL, and yes, I think it's a great city and a great university. So yeah. Think about us when you're doing your application. Another question: will all the lectures be in the same building? Mostly is the answer to that. I think probably, Irene, you've had all of your lectures in the Ear Institute.
I think the mainly the Ear Institute. I don't know whether in the pediatrics are we going to have some in the Chandler House. I'm not quite sure about that.
Yes, yeah, that's
right.
That's true. So, well, we're actually we'll have over 80 students, so we're going to be doing those lectures online.
Okay.
Maybe in post-COVID days, we'll do some in Chandler House, which where we join with our speech and language therapy students.
Yeah, because this is with the SLP students, and it's gonna be over the limit of students you can accommodate in the place.
That's it.
By UCL requirement.
Yeah. So eventually, hopefully, we'll go back to a building called Chandler House, which is 5 minutes away from the institute.
Yeah, it's very close. They have a library there with all the audiology books that you can find.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the UCL Main Compass, which is maybe a 15-minute walk from the Ear Institute.
15 to 20. It's
Yeah.
not really that far away. After you travel there walk there for a few times, you get used to that distance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Won't feel that far.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a really, really great new student centre there. So lots of study space, individual study space, group study space. There's several libraries, obviously, lots of social spaces as well. So yeah, we're not within the main campus, but we're within walking distance of the main campus, and it's got that sort of, you can see I'm not actually here, but it's got
this one is the library.
Yes, and
my background is the law library in the main building.
Irene's not actually in the library, but
no.
It's what the library looks like. This is what UCL looks like on a sunny day here. So yeah. Or a question about the library, actually, there's not a library in the Ear Institute, but as Irene said, all of our a lot of our collection is in a library, which is 5 minutes walk from the Institute.
Yeah. The library has been moved to there because we have some relocation of the Royal ENT Hospital, right?
That's right. So the library used to be in the Royal National ENT Hospital, which used to be next door to us, but they've moved to a brand new building, which is just next to the main UCL campus. And so our library has moved and merged with another library, but just 5 minutes away, so that you don't have to walk 20 minutes to the hospital every time you want to go to the library. Any final questions before we wrap up today? Well, thanks so much, everyone, for coming. As I said, we're looking forward to getting your applications and hopefully to seeing you in September. Paul's email address was on the front of the presentation. Paul, do you want to stick your email address in the chat just so everyone can email you if they've got any questions? And we'll say get well soon to Paul. We hope that your voice recovers soon. Thank you so much, Irene, for coming out this evening. And yeah, do get in touch with us if you want to ask any questions at all. Then we're more than happy to chat to you by email. I'm going to stop the recording.